Welcome back to Slips.n.Tips, guys. My name is Chris, back for another video. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really appreciate it over the past few weeks. You guys have been so great, subscribing to my channel, commenting and sending me DMs on Instagram. I really appreciate it. Now in this video, I got 3 games that I want to cover with you guys. 2 of them in the NRL and 1 of them in the AFL. So super exciting. All 3 of them are on Friday night this week, the 21st of July. So there's a lot to cover in this video, but it's going to be very exciting when we go through all 3. Now, the 2 NRL games on Friday night, we're looking at the Raiders versus the Warriors, and we're looking at the Broncos versus the Rabbitohs. And also in the AFL, we're looking at Essendon versus the Bulldogs, which is super exciting games. Now, before we get into the guys, I just want to say, once again, thank you for your support. If you're not subscribed to my Instagram, please go subscribe. I post tips for every single NRL game and AFL game, and I do all my write-ups on Instagram. Telegram is a free private group that I run. I put all my tips there first. Any extra tips, any live bets that I'm thinking of doing, all go in Telegram. And TikTok is just a fun place, so be sure to support me there. If you're not subscribed, if you're new here, my name is Chris. I post tips for free for a multiple range of sports. I've currently got one running for the Australian Women's World Cup, which is super exciting. At the time of me recording this video, it's Wednesday night. The game's on Thursday, so I'm keen. And for the Thursday night NRL games, guys, I'm not fading the Tigers and Dragons game. However, there's just a bit more exciting games that I wanted to cover with you in this video. And I didn't want to talk about that one here, but they'll still have tips up on all my socials, so be sure to subscribe. Now, before we get into the tips, guys, let me just remind everybody, please gamble responsibly. At the end of the day, this is all about having fun. Please control your units. If you feel like you're losing control, just know that there's a lot of support out there. There's no such thing as a lock or a guarantee. As I say every single week, guys, this is all about having fun. And all we can do is just try to predict to the best of our abilities. But this is not a sure way to make money. And this is all about having fun and gambling responsibly at the end of the day. So please do that, guys. It's really important. Now, let's get into game 1. Got the Warriors versus the Raiders. Now, what a game, guys. There's so much to talk about with you. I don't want to spend 20 minutes alone talking about this game, but I easily could. There's a lot to cover. I'll do my best to stick to my usual format, but I've got some tips in this game that I was really scratching my head over. So I'm keen to hear your comments. I'm keen to hear your feedback. Send me a DM if you agree with my take on this game, and we'll get into it. So let's talk about the game itself. We've got the Warriors versus the Raiders. It's at Mount Smart Stadium, so it's going to be over in New Zealand. I know the Raiders boys went over on Tuesday, so they've been there for a few days. They're doing their captain's run and training and whatnot as usual, so that's exciting. Now, the biggest thing I want to talk about with you guys is the weather. Not many people have looked into this, but I looked into it, and it's going to actually be raining. Now, we saw what happened last time the Warriors played at home in New Zealand and there was rain. Now, yes, that was torrential hurricane rain that was so bad last time, the Bunnies versus the Warriors. However, it's still forecasted to be raining. So that's interesting. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, but that's something that I wanted to start off this game by saying something you should consider before punting. Now, before we get into it, let's go my usual style. These are the first things I thought of, the first things I noticed, and there's a lot in this game. Now, the first being that both teams are in incredible form. It's so hard to pick a winner here. Now, I think, in my opinion, this is a 50-50 game. And yes, I'm a Canberra boy. Yes, I do support the Raiders, but I also care about the tips, utmost important at the end of the day. So I love my Raiders, but I have to look at what do I think is going to be the most likely scenario resulting in this game. Both teams are in such good form. It's actually very hard to pick a winner. I think the Raiders right now, at the time of me recording, it's $3 odds. So that's pretty good value if you think of it like a 50-50 type of game, which that's what I believe. So yeah, that's something very interesting I thought of. The second thing was the fact that it's in New Zealand, that it's raining. The fact that we saw what the Bunnies did to them. You know, we have to consider how the Warriors play in the rain. If their play style is very fast and aggressive and they play to the edges, the rain actually affects that because there's not many balls going to the edges. It's easy to drag wingers and centers out. So that changes the whole dynamic of this game. This is 4th place versus 5th place, which is huge. I think the loser of this game is going to really have a massive impact on the ladder. And we're in the business end of the season now, round 21, where games aren't coming easy. So it's huge because of the dynamic of the ladder. I think the loser of this game could easily go down, especially with the Raiders with their points difference. So that's something also to think about. This is a very important game for both teams. The Raiders are coming off a bye, and the Raiders have been really good away this year. Now, I've noticed all their games have been really close. I've been calling it since the start of the season. Raiders just keep games tight, but the most important thing is they just know how to win. So they've been getting their wins, same with the Warriors. I'm not hating on the Warriors. I'm a big fan of them, but Raiders know how to win, and Raiders are keeping games really tight, and they've been really good away. Now, those are the first immediate things I thought of. There's a lot more to talk about, but let's not waste any more time, and let's talk about now the stats. So the stats should be on the screen, guys. Check it out. Like I say every week, pause the video, have a read. I won't read every single one of them out to you. However, you'll find that interestingly, the stats are actually favoring a lot of the Raiders here. Now, the Warriors, I know that they're a new team this season. I talked about it in a few videos ago, how they've just been red hot and they've just changed the culture and these players are happier to be there. It makes perfect sense. They're now living in New Zealand. As far as traveling goes and setting up camp goes, this is a whole different season for the Warriors. So history and stats, I don't get too caught up in that because the Warriors are a new team. Looking at all these try scorers as well, there's some interesting ones here, which I'll get into. There's a lot of value for these two particular players. But, the Warriors being over on points and how good they've been attacking, and the Raiders kind of having a bit of an edge against teams when they're coming off a bye. That's to summarize what the stats are about. So like I said, have a read. These are my favorite stats that I found. Now, let's get into the tips, guys. I was scratching my head and thinking about this for so long as what am I going to put out to you all for my favorite tips. Now, once again, I know the Warriors are red hot. I know what they did to the Sharks last week was very impressive. And I just respect the Raiders' defense a bit more than what the Sharkies did. Now, I wanted to respect both sides here. I wanted to look at the Raiders and look at the Warriors and think what's going to happen. But most importantly, the rain threw me off. So I was kind of punting with that mentality of what if it's a wet weather game, just like the Bunnies game. And, no one expected the Bunnies to win 13 plus that game. They were not the favorites. So that was a big, wake-up call for us punters. So it's really interesting game. Like I said, there's a lot to cover. But for my $2 flip, guys, the way that I'm doing it for this one, not my usual style. I'm going to have two $2 flips that I really like. These bets will both 2x your money, whatever you put on, however many units put on. You know me, I like to put 3 to 4 units on these flips. I spoke about it last week in my last week's video, so check that out. So yeah, I'm really confident in these two flips. Now, because it's a video, because I want to be a bit more exciting for you all, I picked 2 try scorers as well, which we'll talk about in a second. But for first things first, let's talk about the first flip. So the first flip is DWZ anytime. He's just been a beast. For me to ignore him would just be illegal with how he's been playing. I have to back him. He scored 13 tries in his last 8 games. He scored against the Raiders last time they met. It was that freakish try where Sean Johnson kicked it. He was in the air over the line and he dropped the ball right on the line. It was an amazing try in GIO Stadium. I remember watching it. And since then, he hasn't stopped his form. He's been aggressive. He's been scoring in doubles. I have to back him here, regardless of who I think's going to win. I think he goes over. I'm really confident in him. Now, I added both teams to score 10 because the way that the Raiders have been playing, yes, if I think it's going to be a rainy game and it's going to be a bit sloppy, I still think the Raiders are good enough to get 10 points. Now, the Sharkies last week, they missed so many opportunities and they were just so bad in their defense that most of the ball was in their half. I think that's why they only got 12 points. In the end, they ended up getting a last-minute try. I think the Raiders will be a bit more structured and I think they'll have a bit more of an easier time. So that's why I like both teams to score 10 points. For my other flip, I got the Raiders 17.5 points handicap. Now, if you know me, since round 1, I've been saying the Raiders keep games close. There's a reason why they do this. It's their culture. They love an arm wrestle. If they're losing a game, they love to clutch up and they just steal a win by 6 points or more. And if they're winning a game, they love to just take their foot off the gas. I don't know why. It is what it is. The stats back it. So that's why I'm giving them 17.5 points. Because if they do win or if they do lose, I still think it's going to be within 1 to 12. If you do want to back the Raiders this weekend, 1 to 12 makes perfect sense here. The Warriors aren't going to roll over and just take the L at home. I don't think anyway. The rain might be a factor. So that's why I'm giving them a plus handicap. They have to cover 17.5 points. Even if they lose, as long as they lose within this 17.5 points, this will hit. I added in Hopewadi and Tomoko, player A or player B option. Just like every other week, I explain, these two guys I think are the most strike power the Raiders have right now. Both of them in red hot try scoring form. They both know how to finish. If the rain is a big factor, like I was saying, maybe Hopewadi doesn't get his chances. However, Tomoko and the centers will have a bit more of a better chance going towards the edges. Now, he's just been so aggressive. You never know with him. He's getting 80-meter tries and he's running down players like the cones. So he's just having a great time. I think Tomoko probably carries this one more if it's really wet weather footy. So I like to pair them up. I think either one of them will score and that brings it to $2 odds. So those two flips, guys, I'm putting probably 4 units on each of them. Like I said, I'm really confident in both of them. If you wanted to roll them up in together, I think it brings it to $3.80 if you wanted to just have all 4 legs. I'm taking them both separately, and that's how I'm rolling this game. Now, like I said, for a bit more value, for a bit more fun, I added in Fanua Blake anytime. I just got a feeling about him this game. You know, the way he's been playing, he scored last week against the Sharkies. We've seen how aggressive he is. If this game is going to be played in the middle and it's not going to go to the edges as much, he's going to get a lot of ball. And he's just got a really good history of scoring against the Raiders. I don't know what it is he's got against the Raiders, but he's got a really good history scoring against them. He scored 6 tries this season, so he's been scoring. And like I said, he's coming off one last week at home. So the fans will be up. He'll be up for this game. And I just got a good feeling about him. Similar to Josh Papali'i, this is a very interesting one. He's paying $9.25 odds. Maybe this goes up by the time kickoff starts. However, I'm putting 1 unit on each of these guys. Once again, it's a bit of a fun one. I just got a feeling about them. Like I said, if the ball's going to be played in the middle and looking at their history, I just think there's some good value here. Scored the last time these two teams met back in Canberra in GIO Stadium. And he's also scored a try in each of Canberra's last 2 matches at Go Media. So I don't know what it is. Maybe New Zealand, he gets back there. He just gets a bit of energy from the crowd. But he loves scoring there. He scored against them last time. I'm going to back him for a try scorer. Like I said, this is a fun one, but most of my units will be on the flips. So those are my bets for this game, guys. Like I said, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, it's so hard for me to pick a winner. I actually kind of dodged picking a winner here, as you can tell. I'm probably going to change my mind, but for now, the sake of me recording this video, I probably will tip the Warriors just because of the way they've been playing offensively. But I really wouldn't be surprised if Raiders can win this game by defense. And if they play in wet weather footy, they might use that to their advantage. So it's really hard for me to say. If you ask me on the day, I'll probably change my mind. But for now, I really like the Warriors. But the line of the 17.5 is just way too juicy for me to ignore. I'm taking it. I like these try scorers. And that's how I see this game going. Let me know your thoughts. Let's talk about game 2. This one's going to be another interesting game, guys. Game 2, we got the Rabbitohs versus the Broncos. Now, this is going to be a good game. This is at Sunshine Coast Stadium, which is actually quite unfair considering this is actually a home game for the Rabbitohs, but we'll talk about that a bit more. It's going to be actually good weather this game, thank God. A bit different to the Warriors and the Raiders game, but it's expected to be 17 degrees, so it's going to be dry, which is perfect for the play style of the Rabbitohs. Now, let's talk about the first things first before punting and what we need to talk about. First things I thought of, technically this is a home game for the Bunnies, but it's in Sunshine Coast, so I think Brisbane have an advantage as far as travelling goes. All massive ins. This was the first thing that came to my mind. You know, all these guys are back for the Rabbitohs. We've got Trell Mitchell, Walker, Graham, Cook, Keon, Jai Arrow, Cam Murray. You know, these are all the Origin superstars that they've been missing, and the Bunnies just need a win. So they've got no excuses this game. If the Broncos come out and win, hats off to them, but the Bunnies need to get this win. They're sitting on 8th on the ladder, and they've got literally everyone back, main one being Latrell Mitchell. Broncos also got Reece Walsh back at fullback, Payne Haas and Paddy Carrigan. All 3 massive ins for them. Same goes. They got no excuses if they lose this game, and they've got all the reasons for them to win this game. So it's going to be a good game. I really think so. I spoke about the Broncos in my last video. I think this time of year, I spoke about them not being clutch, famously known, especially for last season. So it's round 21. You know, if they want to prove that they're the real deal, they need to get wins. Now, last week they beat the Bulldogs, so that was a convincing win towards the end. It ended up being, 13 plus. However, it was pretty unconvincing considering they led in 24 points to the Doggies. Now, I know there was a lot of outs, but you still got to think about it. Rabbitohs are desperate for a win. Like I said, they want to stay in the top 8. This is a really must-win, important game for them. And the Broncos have been a bit shaky. So that's why you'll see my bet soon, but I'm favouring more the Rabbitohs here. Now, let's talk about the stats. Once again, stats should be on the screen, guys. Pause the video, have a read. They favour the Rabbitohs here. History-wise, I think Rabbitohs have the upper hand against the Broncos. These try scorers are all interesting. They all caught my attention personally. So that's why I like all these guys. And those are my favourite stats that I've gathered for this game. Now, let's talk about the tips. This one's a bit more interesting. Now, for the $2 flip, like I said last week, I'll explain it again quickly. I usually like to have a system where I put 3 to 5 units on a $2 flip. It's my most confident bet. It's my best bet. And then for the $3 X bets, I like to have anywhere from 3 to 4 units. And then for the 4X bets, I usually like to have 2 to 3 units. And then for anything other than that, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever X odds, I usually like to have 1 unit on it. The goal is to sweep. The goal is to predict a whole entire game. This is my system, and this is what I'm rocking with. So that's how I bet, guys. This is what I've developed. If you have more questions, send me a DM. A couple of you guys did, and we can speak about it a bit more. But that's me personally. Now, back to the tips. Sorry, guys. Let's talk about the flip. So we've got Rabbitohs head-to-head. I've taken them for a clean head-to-head here. Like I said, I think they're going to win. I just look at teams who want it more and look at teams who need it more. And I think the Rabbitohs are one of those teams in this matchup. They just have to get this win sitting in 8th place. Latrell Mitchell's going to come back with a vengeance. I think he's going to have a big game. He's been out for a while, so he'd be itching to get out there. and they've got so many important ins that I just have to back the bunnies here. I did over 32.5 points, alternative total points. Like I said, dry day, so I think this is going to favour the over more than any unders. Rabbitohs, once they get going as well, they're a team that can easily score 30 points on any side. And the Broncos are the real deal as well. They can score over 10 points. So I think 32.5 is going to be very easy. I just paired this up to bring it to $2 odds. Nice and clean. Now for my triple up, talk about it. So for my triple up, I got the Rabbitohs to win either half. If I'm backing them to win, a lot of these, this is the story I've made in my head of how I see this game going. So I might as well back them to win one of the halves. I think they're going to have no issues. I'm not going to sit here and try to pick specifically which half. However, I'm confident they'll win at least one because they're going to win the game. So I've chucked that in with Rabbitohs over 16.5 points. Exact same argument. I've got them winning this game. I doubt it's going to be a 14-0 type of scoreline. I think they'll score over 4 converted tries, maybe get going to 30 points. So 16.5 is very realistic. I'm putting them right around 24 to 34 point range for the Bunnies. That's where I put them in this game. And then I added in Cobbo anytime. Now, last week, it was very frustrating to watch. A lot of you guys DM me while the game was on. Basically, I don't know what Kevy Walters was doing. He did a bit of a switch in positions for Cobbo, and then whoever filled in his position on the wing ended up scoring, which was just very frustrating. So he didn't score last week. Now, Cobbo's a try-scoring machine. He's up against a lot of his Indigenous brothers, so I think he's going to have a big game against the Bunnies. He likes scoring against them, and he likes scoring. So his stats are very interesting. You know, he scored 5 tries in his last 4 games. So I'm backing him. He rarely goes 2 weeks in a row without scoring. I think Cobbo has a really good game. For my quadruple up, my $4 bet, I'm looking at AJ anytime. Now, this is kind of a standard with Latrell and Cody Walker playing. They love playing to AJ. They know how to do the cutout passes. They're so good at getting the ball to AJ. So I really like him here. Now, this is a big game as well for the main reason that if he does score a try, I believe he goes into 3rd place in the all-time try-scoring list. So there's a bit more of extra motivation there for AJ. I think he's going to go over. I really like him here. So I've added him in. I added in Trell Mitt as well. Now, Latrell Mitchell, absolute beast. Like I said at the start of this rant, he's going to come back with a vengeance. He's been sitting on the sideline for so long. He's at fullback. If there's a situation where the game opens up for him and he's on a one-on-one situation with his opposition fullback, Reece Walsh, I just think size-wise, Latrell Mitchell absolutely dominates him. So I think if there's ever a 1v1 situation, he'll have no issues. If there's a line break, he'll be there. And he's just going to be dangerous. So I really like him here. There's a lot of value in him as well. And I added in both teams to score 10. Like I said, the range that I put the Bunnies on is 24 to 34. And I'm putting the Broncos right around 16 to 24 points in that bandwidth of points. That's how I predict this game going for them. So it makes sense to have both teams to score 10. The 7.25 odd bet, that's a combination of my favorite legs. This is my usual style of betting and how I put tips out to you guys, as you know by now. So I like to have a final combination of everything. If it's a sweep, then we win all bets, and that's just the best case scenario that we always strive for on Slips.n.Tips. So that's the goal, guys. So yeah, those are my bets for this game, guys. Let me know your opinion. Let me know your thoughts. Now, the last game, Friday night, for the first time talking about AFL on camera with you guys. I figured this was the right game to cover if I'm going to be talking about the AFL for the first time. We've got the Essendon Bombers versus the Western Bulldogs. Now, this is going to be a very good game. I had a decision to make whether I want to talk about this or the Tigers and the Dragons game in the NRL. And I mean, come on. Sorry, Dragons and Tigers fans, but I had to pick this AFL game. Now, if you know me, if you don't know me, basically what I like to do is for every NRL game, I always find a bit more value with the try scorers. But for every AFL game, I always put my flips out. So I love these $2 flips. I just feel like the AFL reminds me a lot of the NBA, where you can get a lot of value from players' individual performance. I love punting on the AFL because the disposals, the goal markets, you can add in a pick your own line, you can add in a over or under alternative points. There's so many ways to get to a nice, safe $2 flip, in my opinion. Not that that's a real thing anyway. However, you can get really safe, as close as you can, in the AFL, specifically focusing on player markets. So I want to talk about that now. Now, this game's going to be at Marvel Stadium. Weather-wise, we shouldn't expect any issues. It should be dry, be a bit cloudy, but it won't be wet weather footy, which is great. And there's a lot to talk about stats-wise, I think, with these two teams. Now, this is a really interesting game because in the AFL world, this is 7th versus 8th on the ladder. So I think the loser of this game, just like the Warriors and the Raiders, can get leapfrogged. So they've got a lot to play for. Both teams want to win. I'm really liking the Bulldogs, and I'll talk about it a bit more with you guys and a bit more about the player stats. But the way that I've done this, guys, I've got 3 flips. Because it's my first time talking about it, I might as well put 3 of my favorite flips out. I'll talk about why each one of them are different. And if you need help taking any legs, we'll talk about it on Instagram. Send me a DM. we'll cook up something else if you want to add more value or take some out. Before we get into that, let's talk about the stats. So the stats should be on the screen for this game, guys. They are actually favouring both teams. Essendon have a really good record. This is a home game for them at Marvel Stadium, but the Bulldogs have a better record against Essendon. So you've got a team who's at home versus a team who they usually lose to in the Bulldogs. So I think it's going to be interesting in that regard. Now, Bulldogs, just like the Raiders in the NRL world, they're keeping games really close. Whether it's a win or a loss, they're keeping games within the 1-39 margin. So that's really interesting, and I've figured that out, and I want to take advantage of that, which we'll talk about a bit more. Now, the 4 players that I'm focusing on for one of my flips, you'll see them on screen. The stats are there. These guys I really liked a lot. I can't fade them. They got my attention. Now, let's talk into the tips, guys, or the flips, should I say. 3 flips. Let's talk about the first one. Now, this one, I focus purely on the result. I think Bulldogs will win. I picked them head-to-head. Now, the stats and the history and whatnot, it's more about, I guess, a feeling I've got. I think they've lost their past 2 games. I think this is a bounce-back game for them. They rarely lose 3 games in a row. They've only done it once this season, and they've been really consistent stringing along games from round 6 all the way to round 10. That string of games that they went on, they were really strong, and I think they want to get back to that form coming into the finals. Essendon have a height issue in a sense where the players and the matchups, so I think the Bulldogs will take full advantage of this. So that's another reason why I like them to win. Now, because what I was saying about the 1-39 margin with the Bulldogs, I've given Essendon plus 46.5 points handicap. So what that means is we need the Bulldogs to win, but I've given them that extra 6.5 points just to make it nice, clean $2 odds. That way they've got 46.5 points to keep it within. I don't think the Bulldogs will blow this team out. They're at home. Like I said, they've got the home advantage, Essendon, but I do think it's going to be a bit close. So that's why I like this a lot. Now for my other flip, I was focusing purely on player props and player markets. So for this one, I've got Aaron Norton. He's kicked 2+ goals in his past 5 matches. He's red hot. I've got Cody Waitman, who I've been picking every week, and he keeps delivering them ticks for us. So I'm going to keep backing him. If they're going to keep offering at his value, I'm going to take it. He's kicked 16 goals in his past 5 matches. He's becoming one of my favorite players. Marcus Bontempelli, he's had 25 disposals in 9 of his last 10 games, so I really like him. He's kind of the key factor here in the Bulldogs winning. I think their success is always on the back of him. He does everything. He's the main guy for this team, and he just does so much dirty work, and he's always active, so I really like him a lot. Jai Caldwell has recorded 20+ disposals in 7 of Essendon's last 8 games. So I had to pick an Essendon player. Now, out of all of them, I was looking at Mason Redmond. I was looking at some of the goal kickers. But I just, Jai stuck out to me here. I think he can get 20 for us. I think he's probably going to end up in the 24 to 28 type of range. And he's been super active as well. So I've got a good feeling about him. I think he's going to deliver for us. Let's hope he comes through. Now, for my other flip, my third and final flip, this one is an interesting one. It's the Bulldogs' first quarter winning result. Now, the stats back this one. They basically won all the first quarters in, I'll just bring it up, each of their last 9 games against Essendon. So they're coming out strong. They're coming out aggressive. This one I couldn't avoid. I just wanted to chuck it in there. And I wanted to pair it up with under 198.5 points. Now, the under points is the maximum you can do on the unders. Yes, it's ugly, but at the end of the day, it brings it to nice, clean $2 value. And this hasn't hit once in any Western Bulldogs game this season. I went back and counted, and we've just managed to avoid it. And most of their games usually end in the 160, 170 point range. So I think 198 is very safe. The first quarter, we'll know by the first quarter if this hits or not. I just got a good feeling about it. So those are my 3 flips. One's about the result, one's about the player props, and one's an interesting one with the first quarter and the points. And yeah, hopefully we get a sweep. That's the goal. We can hit all 3, and we'll see how we keep going. Now, like I said, guys, those are all my tips. I post tips for every single NRL game, every single AFL game. That's my style. If you're new here, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Once the NRL and the AFL season's over, I will progress to other sports. I don't just stick to one sport. I love my NBA. I love my tennis. There's some Grand Slams opening up soon with the the Australian Open. So there's a lot of sports coming up, guys. And whenever you see them on my page, I always try to justify every single leg and why I like it. So support me, guys. Like I said, at the end of the day, it means a lot. All your support already. And yeah, let's try get them ticks and let's try get a sweep happening this weekend, guys. Good luck on all your tips, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.